Okay, it's time to look at Project Black Flag from Kobold Press. Really have a lot of respect for Kobold Press, and then the times that we're having at the moment, they've raised their flag and said we're going to make our own game system, and this is the first playtest packet. How to use this packet? So you can use this with creating characters for 5e, but there are some tweaks that don't follow 5e rules. So creating a character with this rule set does create slightly more powerful characters. If you were to make a normal 5e character, you'd have to give them a feat perhaps to just bump them up to be level with one of these Black Flag characters. So it really goes back to basics in the introduction. What is a role-playing game? I presume that you know. What's a dungeon master? What does a character have to do? What do the dice mean? We've done all this. And this is free. Go to Kobold Press. You can find this yourself. But dipping into character creation here, it says before you choose any options, you just spend some time thinking about what kind of player you want to play. Are you magic based? Are you melee based? Use that as a starting point and then choose a class. Hit dice, hit points, health work exactly the same with your constitution modifier, bumping it up. Proficiencies seem to work just the same as all the usual ability scores. The only place it starts to veer off is point buy. So most people roll for stats by rolling dice, but there's always been the option to just point buy. I believe that the 5e version is 26-ish points to spend. This is 32, slightly more. There's a scale here for so if you want to be 12 in all your stats, it costs 4 each time. Standard array, these numbers are a little higher than the standard array in 5e. This is just like if you would have rolled it, let's just say you got these. It's across the board, average, but it's a high sort of average. Maybe average is the wrong word, but it gives you a mix of numbers. Choose a lineage and heritage, and that is kind of what this is focusing on in this first playtest. Backgrounds seem to be the usual, and there's a little checklist of what you have to go along. Gaining levels, again, usual way that you gain levels, till we get right down to lineage and heritage. As far as I understand it, your lineage is like, if you're a dwarf, then in your blood is dwarf-related skills and all the things all the baggage that comes with being a dwarf gets passed down to you. Whereas heritage is, well, what if you were born a dwarf but grew up amongst orcs? You've inherited orcish ways, so you can cross-pollinate to make things much more customisable. I'm playing a dwarf, but I have orcish tendencies. So it has 3 playable types here. I'm talking dwarf, and then elf, and then human. So, the dwarf first. Now, different types of dwarf here will be the stone kind of dwarf and the fireforge or metalworker type of dwarf. I noticed here, speed, your base walking speed is 25 feet. I think the new edition of D&D is meant to make everybody 30. Now, it says 5 foot. I'm not much over 5 foot, and I can walk more than 25 feet. I think I'd be a 30-foot walker. Dark vision, all as we're used to. Dwarven resilience, I think advantage on saves against poison and you're resistant to poison damage. I think that's standard. Hit point, dwarven toughness, your hit point maximum increasing by 1 and increases by an extra 1 every time you gain level. I think that's the same, so there's no world shakers here. If you take the Fireforge Heritage line, you gain proficiency, for example, in the Glassblower's Tools kit or the Smith's Tools, where you can double your proficiency bonus because you're better at those. Forgecraft, you are resistant to fire damage. I like that. You can even speak a fire-based language in Ignan. You know the Mending cantrip because Reforge is something you can inherently do well. Making and fixing metal is your bag. However, stone heritage, if we go down to stone heritage, proficiency with a battle axe, a hand axe, a light hammer and warhammer. Very understandable. You have dwarven armour training. You have tool proficiencies with either smith's tools, brewers or mason's tools. Now that's a fairly standard stone dwarf. Elves, however, they walk 30 feet because for some reason they don't lose 5 feet. As usual, elves can't be put to sleep by magic. You do a trance, all the same stuff. Cloud heritage, though, on elves. These elves were the first of the cloud elves. Good to have a new type. Choose a school of magic for which you have cultivated an affinity. You learn a cantrip from that spell tree. Nothing too world-shaking about the rest of the stuff. Grove heritage. Beast affinity. Using gestures and sounds, you can communicate simple ideas with beasts, and you have advantage on checks made to interact with non-hostile beasts. Canopy walker. So these are the very much more jungle-based or wilderness-based elves. You have a climbing speed equal to your walking speed. Typical elvish weapons. Okay, humans. A nomadic heritage. You have advantage on checks on saves made to resist cold weather or hot weather. You can reduce exhaustion by 1 level on a short rest. Interesting. But once used, you cannot reduce your exhaustion level in another short rest. It has to be in a long rest. So cosmopolitan heritage is city or other urban environment. You can't be surprised, except when asleep or otherwise incapacitated. Then it moves on to talking about backgrounds. Ties into your backstory, basically. That's what a background is. So yeah, things that you're good at, languages, equipment that you have, and talents. Each background allows a character to choose 1 talent. They're hoping to make things more unique. The scholar. You've spent years researching a particular branch of study. You gain 2 skills, you learn 2 languages, you have a bottle of ink, a quill, a little bit of extra things. Choose a talent from the following list. Polyglot, school specialisation or trade skills. So down to polyglot. Learn 3 languages of your choice, not common. So the things to do with language is polyglot. School specialisation is basically spells. The ability to cast spells is a prerequisite. And then the third one was trade skills. So that's getting hands-on with using tools. So those talents, yeah, make you more detailed and refined. Talents, when a character chooses their background, they select 1 talent from a list of options provided in the background. They select 1 talent, and when a character class grants an improvement, they can choose to increase a single ability score by 2, 2 different ability scores by 1, or choose a talent. Just like we used to choose feats instead of upping our stats. So there's a magical talent, combat casting. You automatically succeed on con saves you make to maintain concentration on a spell if the DC is lower than your spellcasting DC. When a hostile enters a space within 5 feet of you or provokes an opportunity attack, you can use your reaction to cast a cantrip. Elemental Savant, you can choose a damage type. When you cast a spell that deals damage, you decide to convert the damage type to the spell. That makes sense. Damage type to that of your chosen elemental damage type. You can also re-roll damage dice results of 1 and take the new result then. Nice. Mental Fortitude. Once per long rest, if you fail a save, you can choose to re-roll the save. Fair enough. Mental Fortitude, yeah. If you are affected by a spell or magical effect due to failing a save, which will happen a lot, you can repeat the save at the end of each of your turns, even if the ongoing magical effect would not typically allow you to do so. A strong mind. Hand to hand, makes sense. Fighting, monks, whatever. And that pretty much rounds out this playtest. So an elf, a dwarf, and a human to basically try and build your character around, and a few little tweaks. I would possibly use standard array, as it's a bit beefier to start the character there. Yeah, sure. There's only a few days left on this being available, I think. So get on board. Show Kobold Press that you actually care. Let me know how you go on, or what you think about the whole everyone starting their own little games, because everyone's bringing out their own rule set nowadays, and I think we're getting oversaturated already. But I would back Black Flag. I just want that to be the predominant competition to Wizards. Alright, here comes a video that I hope you can watch straight after this one. See you in the next one, guys.